For the muskets.
No, there's, okay.
As long as they're the same color, that's what I'm going for. Is I would like this to be monochromatic, showing its 21st century design, and then this be monochromatic, showing its 20th century design. Also, I would replace the bluestone walk. Right now it's all concrete, so I would just replace it as bluestone.
So can I ask you just a quick question? It's
Yeah,
a
sure.
little hard to tell from these elevations, the double hung windows on the first floor. I don't know if it's just the printing, is it a shutter effect on one half of each, or is it two double hung windows side by side?
Here and here, these are
Yeah.
shuttered. They're full shutters, operable.
So it's
Single,
one-
they're single windows. Right now existing,
Oh.
they are, well, this one's a double on this side, and this one's actually a triple. It's a picture window with two little flankers.
Okay, so it's a double hung window with a same size shutter flanking it.
Yes, and it's got all of the shutters in the area are board. They're board shutters for first floors and usually louvered shutters for second floor. So right now these are all board shutters, full size to one side, operable. And then the windows have a simulated bar, like there's a Passive House window, Zola, that has a historic line that will give you that line so you can have a double hung window. The original house didn't have any divided lights, it's all 1/1. So, I went back and forth on the 6/6, 12/12, but for me, it didn't make sense for this Cape Cod house to have the 6/6.
So it's 1/1.
It's 1/1.
Okay.
On the second floor, it's 1.
I'm trying to get a sense of standing in front of it, looking straight at it. You've got the one dormer, and then are those evenly, the fenestration on the addition, is that even, is that offset? It's hard for me to envision.
I don't know if you can see this from there.
So
This is flat on here.
Okay,
The idea was that the windows alternate between first and second floor, almost like, where the jack studs are coming down from the second floor to give you a window. They're also creating the jack stud sides for the window below. So the idea is that they alternate between first and second floor. That's the intention.
The visual thing that I'm losing is the sense of entryway.
Yeah.
Most of the buildings along that stretch of Green Street either have a front porch with a real clear set of steps, or these little
Right,
platforms
with the brackets.
with a scroll work or something
Yeah.
denoting an entry visually. And I haven't heard you mention anything about that.
So I'm laughing because the house, as it exists,
Right, has this funky
has that,
little
has
yeah.
that metal thing that I wanted to tear off first thing I bought the house, and I didn't.
I couldn't tell if
It's
that
still
was
there.
metal or plastic, to be
No,
honest.
it's metal. It's basically a window awning put up on makeshift porch scroll work stands with wire.
Right,
They're just, it's
but
nothing. So
right,
back
but
to your
that
question.
that actually calls to the idea of, yep, this is the door.
Exactly. Well, this is the existing door. This is where the door is on the Cape Cod.
Right.
There is another door around the side. The idea behind this is that I did want someone who approaches the house to come under something so that they have cover, but I didn't want to have like a door entry demarcation, like a small porch, or I wanted it to be more integral to the design itself. So when I took this and I brought it out and I pulled it out, I said, oh, I don't need that anymore. It kind of went away on its own as the design evolved.
Okay, and the
And
stairs.
the steps do align with the door.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
the
that's
steps are right
central.
on with the door.
All right, and I guess does there have to be a railing on the other side?
This side has a railing, yeah. I'm
Okay.
trying to get the grade up, to get under the 30 inches and maybe even lose a riser so I wouldn't need railing at all. If I can get under that 30-inch mark and the 2 riser mark, I'd be able to pull it off without a railing.
Okay. And the sense of how far does the upper story extend beyond the present front wall?
5 feet.
Well,
But-
that's larger than
I know.
I had
Talk to
visualized.
my structural engineer about that one.
Cantilever
Yeah.
interest. Ooh, okay.
But when I met with Tom Tiano, when he reviewed it for zoning, the I have to be more than 10 feet off the curb line. And so I came out 4 feet, and then I was just like, screw it, I'm gonna go for 5 feet, because I want more room under that cantilever in order to be able to sit on that porch and be under cover if it's raining. So right now it's 5 feet. It's still not out as far as Jed or Paul and Queenie's house go. I drew a dashed line between their houses to see what I had to work with, but they're both encroaching. Sorry, Jed. They're both encroaching. Sorry, we'll have to tear your house down now, but.
Throwing you under the bus.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, they can't, you're not gonna tear down his house.
But
So I measured how much I had, and I still had like 3 more feet or something before I would be in
yeah, it's
violation.
significantly set further back than
Yeah,
the
it's-
houses on either side.
Yes, but the idea is to intentionally bring it out so that it has the same, so it still has that edge that currently this house is lacking. Now, again, I didn't want to take it all the way across because I thought that it would be too symmetrical, and it would look kind of odd to have this addition come all the way across. So I wanted it to have balance in an asymmetrical balance. So the idea was to just do 2/3. This line actually does align with the party wall of the 2 apartments downstairs, so that all the plumbing can be in one wall, and so it's easier to insulate. So it's there because it also relates to the inside of the house.
Okay, and the windows in the front of it are intentionally asymmetrical as well.
They're symmetrical on the first floor,
Right.
but yes, they're intentionally symmetrical. It's kind of like a, big sentence and punctuation mark. The idea is to balance, and the larger window is closer to the middle.
Assuming you live in the upper part with those larger windows,
Sure.
what kind of window treatment do you envision, since that's going to be very visible depending on what it is?
Yeah, I thought about doing like bottom-up screens, but I thought that might be a little distracting from the street. I thought I would have another level of shears, so that when you're viewing it from the street, you're seeing, it's very consistent.
Illumination.
Yeah, you're not seeing something that's half. Because these do go to the floor.
So standard practice in the historic district is not to put an addition on a main facade. Did you consider the sort of more best practice approach of putting the addition to the rear of your lot?
That's a great question. I did have many schemes where the addition was off the rear, but it's a walkout basement. The grade drops off pretty fast in the back. And so if I put the addition in the rear, I would have to, any windows in the back would need egress, and I would need fire escapes because I'm an extra floor out of the ground. So the idea is that all the egress is coming out the front or at the sides before the grade drops.
And the plan is to keep this as a 3-family?
3-family, yep, long-term leasing. Well, as I said to Heritage, someone asked me where I would live, and I said it depends on how much money I'm making. Because if I'm broke, I'm gonna live here and rent out these 2, but if I'm doing pretty well, I'll probably live upstairs, or, I don't know. Yeah, the plan, right now I live in one, and my office is in the other, and I rent the 3rd floor long-term. But, yeah, the idea is that it would remain a 3-family.
Are you familiar with the Secretary of Interior standards for infill? Have you looked at policy brief 14?
Yeah, Scott even mentioned it when he was up, right?
Right.
Yeah. What about it?
It's just generally not standard practice to put an addition, especially such a unique addition, on a front facade of a building in a historic district near historic properties. So there is no alternative for you as far as citing the addition to the rear of the property, no other plan?
No, I mean, even to the sides, I mean, I was pushing out to the sides as well. But to me, based on how far 141 is recessed from its neighbors, it seemed that the best way to approach the addition would be to push it to the front so it could also have that street presence. For me, it's best practices, historic or not. It just made good sense because the house as it exists right now is so pushed back that to me the only place to go would be forward.
But yet only on 2/3 of the front.
Sure.
So is that one side considerably more visible from John Street as you walk up it? Is that what you're going to see, or are you going to see the split? I'm just trying to envision this.
Well, this is when you're coming down John, you'll see this side first and then this will appear. But Green is one way, and so when you're coming down Green, you're primarily going to see this side first. And that was intentional. I mean, this side, I actually have the addition and the built-out retrofit with the new siding and the exterior insulation. I have this flush. It's intentional to show that gable, it's as if the gable goes through the addition and shows up on the other side. But I knew that this was the side that people were going to see the least of because Green is a one-way street. So I wanted that to be a little surprise. And be intentional, of course. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Beside the dormer that is referencing the property, is it at 138?
I think so.
Are there other specific references to your design within the neighborhood? Because the roof shapes seem different, and intentionally so.
Sure.
So just thinking of our sort of criteria
Mhm.
for sort of evaluating a proposal, are there other elements that you're trying to reference within the historic district? Or
Well,
nearby buildings even?
well, the shutters was an easy one. I went back and forth about the shutters. I'm still feeling like it's the right design move for the neighborhood to have operable shutters on the house. But I believe it's the front, let's see. When I first started the design, I was putting a lot of odd shapes facing the street, and they were always, the gable or gambrel or shed or whatever it was always facing the street. So when you looked at it in relation to all of its neighbors that have window, and a gable on the side, the eave coming to the street, I said, okay, that seems a little disjointed to have all of these roofs coming down toward the street, and then my house goes, boop, boop, or boop, some crazy shape. So I believe that even though the addition is, looks the way it does and works the way it does and has the windows as it does, it still is paying respect to its neighbors in its scale and its height. It was intentional to make this show itself as different, pay respect to the neighbors, and then still be monochromatic so that it wasn't calling too much attention to itself. I don't want it to disappear, but I do want it to straddle that line between respectful and new. But I do believe that this shape is like its neighbors. If I did a 12 coming off of this thing, it would go way up. And I didn't want that either. I wanted it to be a little more subtle at the street and not show a big piece of roof. So I believe that was inspired by the neighbors. Trying to think of another one, but I don't think I have one.
Because almost all of the neighboring buildings, especially on that block and on that streetscape, are highly symmetrical. Even though the building styles vary, that is one pattern within the neighborhood that's relatively consistent until you get to the sort of far end going down the one-way of
Right, once you get past Jed's house, where it starts being they're mostly gables
Right.
facing the street.
Right.
That's correct.
But at least that section is pretty cohesive as far as its patterning. So, did you ever consider a addition, or maybe you mentioned it, where that was a bit more symmetrical?
More symmetrical.
Yeah.
Well, I did look at the Hasbrook house, where originally this house was all one, it was just one wall. This gable wasn't even here when it was originally built. And then this gable was placed, and you can see that it's gable and then it's two dormers, but it's not symmetrical. It's the rhythm of the window to door on the first floor is somewhat symmetrical.
It's weirdly symmetrical if you cut it in half. It's exactly symmetrical with its other
Yes, on
half.
yes, on the first floor,
Right.
yeah, not with the,
That's
not with the
because
roof.
that side was an addition.
Right,
There.
Yeah.
right.
But and at the Dumont house as well, there's two windows on one side of the door with the gable demarcating the door, and then there's three on the other, so it's not symmetrical. It's got rhythm, I'll give you that, it's definitely got rhythm, but it's more like what I'm trying to do with my design, in that it's asymmetrical, but it's also balanced. And truthfully, I mean, the way the windows, these windows are still, marching down the street. I mean, right now, this isn't symmetrical either. I mean, this was obviously the original living room, and that's why it has the picture window. This was a bedroom. So one of the things I was trying to do is almost like at the first floor, it keeps that symmetry with the neighbors. And then it's the second floor that is pulled out. And it's not symmetrical. I hope I answered your question.
Did you consider, I'm trying to understand what's happening on the ground floor. As you walk down the sidewalk, you're gonna have a step up, you're using the overhang in lieu of, say, a front porch? Or a front landing?
There will be a porch on the ground, so there will be steps up to a porch, and the porch will be the same width as the addition.
Okay,
But it will be almost the same depth. I mean, I believe the porch is 6 feet deep and the overhang is 5 feet deep. The idea is that the water will run off, and hopefully I can push some of it towards this flower bed here.
okay.
But the idea is that this piece is also this piece, that they are connected somehow.
Okay. And so the steps up will demarcate the entryway.
Yeah, they're aligned with right with the front door. They're very much where the existing steps are now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Other commentary? Any other questions? Everyone get a sense of the rationale and the layout here?
I think it's very creative, and I like your thoughtfulness and how you've approached this, and it's clear you've spent a lot of time thinking through how it relates to the neighbors. You've taken a very, with all due respect, very mediocre house as it exists, and done something I think really inventive without doing something really bad and trying to make it some kind of imitation of what's there now.
And I think that's our key question. Is this an improvement to the streetscape as it exists? I think everyone would agree that the Cape itself is kind of an anomaly on its streets in the surrounding area. And so it's a tricky problem and a real balancing act, and you've been describing quite the balancing act.
Sure.
It's incongruous in the district, definitely, but I think it has its own integrity as a building from the 1950s that probably shouldn't have been built in the district in that expression. But it was before any commission, as you know, was formed. I would like to see, I mean, in some ways, even though it's underwhelming as far as its neighbors, like I said, it does have its own integrity and a sort of simplicity of form that makes it almost neutral in this context, which often you want non-conforming buildings to be
That,
neutral.
yeah, that was the idea, yeah.
So, I would love to see all considerations about where your, basement level stairs are, what this concept would look like if it were flipped around, what that expression could be on the main facade, and whether or not it could be, as creative as this solution is, but also a little bit, less, expressive in form on the main facade of a really heavily historic district. This is within the footprint of the original stockade.
Yeah,
I think you're within one of
it's
the
on,
little-
it's on the wall.
Yes, you're in the wall.
I'm in the wall, yeah.
Yeah.
The blue is the historic district, and the red is is heritage.
You had one neighbor spoke on behalf of it. Are there other neighbors?
No, they're just friends and
Oh.
coworkers.
There's a few neighbors.
Well, Jed is here from Heritage.
Right, the what? Right. Some other neighbors spoke.
But in theory, preservation is talking about a building in term of not our lifetime, but the lifetime of buildings in the district, which as we know can be up to 200, 300 years. So it's wonderful that the neighbors, the existing owners of these buildings and stewards of these buildings are supportive of this expression, but that's just a blip in the history
Of
of
course.
the buildings. So,
Well, it's my intention for this house to bring people to this district for different reasons than the other houses in the neighborhood. Since this house is going to be so technologically advanced in its approach to passive house technologies, it will bring people in to see that. It might bring people in to see a great example. I just called myself great, sorry about that. A great example of a 21st century design in a historic district. You know, it might actually work in harmony with the district and bring people into the district for different reasons. I didn't want to try to rebuild the stone house or even rebuild the cape, but I felt that they both deserved at least respect.
I'm being quiet because I'm really on the fence, to be honest. I think the scale is much more fitting than what you're working with originally from the
I'm sure.
1950s. And I like the fact that it's basically monochromatic. I guess what offends me some is that very large window on the second story.
Mhm. 5 by
And I'm
7.
not sure how that porch is gonna work. It gives me a feel of a very modern structure, but maybe a porch that might be at the back of a house instead of the front of a house. And you have such sort of elegant home surrounding it. And I don't know, I'm on the fence.
Well, one thing, it's nice to be able to have a front porch, and the houses after you get farther down John Street do have porches, but it's because they're set farther back from the street. I mean, the Hasberg house and the Dumont house, they don't have that opportunity to have front porches, and they might like to have them if they could, but they're simply too close to the street. So
And
this is
there's-
just another way to try to bring it forward.
Yeah, and I understand with the second story overlapping how it provides shelter. Had you thought at all about having a porch on the back of the house?
You mean well, if there's a patio, there's a
There is a
walkout basement.
patio
There's a,
already.
yeah, because
Okay.
there's a walkout basement.
Oh, I see.
Um,
Yeah, the
Spent a lot
drop
of time
is
on
pretty
that patio.
severe. He's really close to the edge of the old stockade, so it's a pretty steep drop to the back of the building. It's a full story, am I correct?
mhm.
Mhm.
But strangely enough, my backyard is a little higher than my neighbor's.
Right.
I've got a little hill.
you can thank the filling of the stream that
Yeah,
used to
that,
exist
that
on the
might be a
other
Tannery
side
Brook
of the,
thing, yeah.
yeah.
that might be Tannery Brook.
Have you considered switching the colors from the right
Hmm.
roof treatment to the left on the second floor?
I have done a lot of, I've done a lot of changes on the color, but I don't think I've ever tried that one. I mean, originally the addition was all Galvalume. I mean, it was aluminum. So I feel like that I have changed that color from light to dark intentionally. But,
You want the contrast.
I want them both to reference stone in the neighborhood and in that way not call too much attention to themselves. I know I have a turquoise door, I'm sorry, but, yeah, I haven't. I have looked at doing the whole thing in one
Yeah.
and have it just be a play of textures.
Would
Yeah,
that
because-
be the bluestone color or more of a limestone?
Probably the limestone, that it's, that this is, smooth and this is shiny and this is rough and this is burnt,
Yeah.
but all kind of in the same palette. I don't know if this would be if I would have this much contrast between these two. It might be more subtle. The challenge is to make sure you find things that are, the same. Like, I mean, you could argue that these are the same, or these are the same, but this one's a little warmer. It really depends on the window manufacturer and the clad color and the shingle color. I feel like the paint and the siding, I can change those based on what I find of these other pre-finished products. I can't make up a pre-finished product. So that's where I'm going to start is the color of the pre-finished. But I would look into changing the colors, of course. Lighter and dark, you mean?
Yeah, I think the windows are fine. It's just when you have the side view, there's a lot of contrast there. Yeah. I think you mentioned at the Heritage Commission that there was maybe you had a reference to the family court, the old family court building.
Julie
No,
picked up on
it's-
that. I just said sure, yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of references it, which
Yeah.
you could argue is just around
Yeah.
the corner.
Yeah, it's got that really deep mansard with the recessed window. I mean, don't forget this wall is almost a foot thick.
Yeah.
So really, just taking where you want that window changes the profile of the house. You could bring that window in, and it would make a very dark outline here. But I'm thinking that I would want this window and this window to look the same as far as their relation to the outer wall. So for that reason, everything's brought to the outside. And of course, air sealed.
And you'll have sort of a window seat effect on the inside as a result? Is
Yeah,
that-
yeah. Deep window sill.
Yeah. Right, these stone buildings are what, 18 to 24 feet?
Yeah, they've got
24
sills.
inches, yeah, they've got window sills.
Sure.
I think this does a good job of distinguishing itself from the other buildings, and it's surprisingly not that loud. The difference in its design to the other buildings, I think that the massing is on point, and I can't say this is like my favorite style of building, but it doesn't offend me. I think it's largely theoretical in terms of how you're referencing things, like who's gonna know that color is gunmetal or whatever, but there are elements to it that are, pretty obviously referencing like the different lines that you're using, and I find them pleasing.
Let us go first. All right. Did anyone else have commentary, feedback, questions? For me, the interesting thing here is a lot of buildings on that section of Green Street have upper stories that extend over a front porch. I'd say the white wooden buildings, there's 2 or 3 of them further down the block, where that is a key part of it. The building where my office is, which is on about 4 doors down the other way, it's also part of that design.
It's
And
called
that
a
make-
garrison.
Yeah, and that, creating that out of what you have is, I think, a literal move forward. But the problem I have is the fenestration being so asymmetrical as opposed to what you see on that street with sort of a steady, you were discussing the rhythm. It's a definite breaking rhythm. But it's not huge. Are the placements of the windows set in stone, or set in whatever this material actually is?
Yeah, they directly relate to what's going on the inside.
Okay,
Like this large window is right where there's a table, and then there's a little reading area over here, and then the couch is in between these two smaller windows on the second floor, these two. And actually, the overhang has one window that faces up.
right, I
Street
could
too.
see that, it's a
So
little,
it's a desk, so you can sit at the desk and you can look down, you can look down Green Street and see all the cars coming towards you.
such pleasure.
But yeah, the windows have been tweaked many times. They've been moved inches at a time, and it's all about having them work for the interior of the space.
Okay. So that incongruity is just going to be there on the exterior. And we have to decide whether the pluses and minuses all make sense given what we're starting with. Whew, do you want to march through the criteria and then open it up to commentary? Okay, I think that would be the better way to go as well. All right, so taking a look at the effect of proposed work in changing, destroying, or affecting exterior features of the landmark or landmark district. We're only dealing with the district question here. It is a change. Do we find it on the whole productive, destructive? It's a definite change. I think we've had a couple of people in favor. We've had one, I'm on the fence. I would say that for me, the move to the street front is a general plus. I have a tougher time with the one side of the building more closely referencing its history and the other being as modern as it is, and the asymmetry of it, breaking the rhythm of what we see. But again, for me, on the whole, I see a plus in the extension. And while I'm not in love with the windows, as they're placed, they let the world know that this is modern and this is a change. And so we're not creating a false sense of history. With you, it's a tough call for me, but I like that extension. And so I'm tending toward it. Anyone else have commentary on that particular criterion?
I think that it definitely changes the view shed of that street, and I don't see the references. Our guidelines are pretty specific about finding rhythm references in roof shape, and I think you're changing all of those things are unique and interesting. But there is there aren't enough reference within the neighborhood to be able to see it as a pattern that exists within this, especially that street. And so I still struggle with the idea that this is an interesting concept from the perspective of the energy retrofit and the perspective of taking a somewhat underappreciated structure and reimagining it with contemporary materials. But I keep going back to the fact that it's incongruous for the nationally listed and locally listed district based upon many of our own criteria. So I do believe that if this were in another part of Kingston, there's a lot to support. But it's in sort of one of the most tightly protected in a lot of ways view shapes in the city and in some ways in the state and in parts of in the country too.
Okay.
So, so many of these things that are based upon our criteria a bit jarring or almost in a way confrontational. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that in a creative sense. Make it challenging for me to be able to see this in 15 or 20 years and to say that this edition will have distinctiveness in its own right. In some ways, the building itself, to me, has already neutralized itself. You know what I mean? In that it's so simple, and you have very distinguished sort of historical examples of buildings around it that people kind of, as you say, view past. So I'm having a really hard time reconciling our own criteria with the variation in roof shapes that don't have precedent within the district. If there were one or two of those elements that were sort of not in keeping with the guidelines that are before us for the district, then that would be easier for me to reconcile.
Well, first of all, thank you. I believe that this project looks the way it is because of where it is. I don't think if this house were in another part of Kingston, it would look anything like this. I think it would look completely different because it would be pulling in contextual clues from its environment. I think that the way the roof, the way the front of the house is placed, and the reference to the gable in the other homes, I think it's a direct correlation to me. And I think that's one of the great things about being an architect is that you get these puzzles, you know. This house is trying to do so many things. You know, it's trying to, you know, pay respect here and pay respect here and pay respect here, and then still be its own thing. And so I think the idea that this is paying respect to the house as it was, and this is paying respect to the neighborhood, as well as the house that it is as a 21st century construction, and it would freeze time in 2020 or whenever it was built, and you could come back to it 15 years from now and say, that's the 21st century. You would say that. Just as much as you would say this is the 20th century. See, I've been working on this long enough, and I don't feel like I'm kind of, you know, caught up in any kind of bubble where I can't like get out of it. I don't think I've designed myself into any kind of corner with this. I'm fluid, I'm open to the ideas, but I think that this addition looks this way because of its neighbors. I think I'm sorry that you can't. I'm sorry if you're not seeing it, but I don't know. I feel like I've explained it. I don't know how much better to explain it. I think if you look at the neighbors, this just is like, oh, it's a gable. It's not a shed. It's not a gambrel. It's not a flat roof. All these things have been sketched and tossed. This is a gable addition facing the street like every one of its neighbors, and I think that's a direct representation of the neighborhood I do.
Is the problem for you that it's not carried all the way across, that there's this divide?
Well, I think I understand what you're doing there. I understand that you are paying homage to the existing roof line and the capeness
Sure.
of the cape,
Yeah.
and that you're offering a modified dormer as a sort of solution to a very rhythmic placement of dormers throughout the neighborhood itself.
Yeah, sure.
And that's sort of a take on that. What I don't see anywhere else in the neighborhood, in another building itself, it is multiple planes for the roof with multiple pitches. Well, that is a later pop top essentially, right?
No, I'm giving you a dead-on side view, so I hope it helps you see that the shed dormer is designed based on it ending up at the peak of the existing roof with its additional layers. But then the addition is the exact same pitch. But it's a 12-12.
Right.
So I've taken that, but that's Jim Fish architecture right there. That's taking something, referencing it, replicating it, and then saying, where do I go from here? And that's another reason why I like the shed dormer all the way to the edge, because it actually creates this interesting flat roof shape all on its own, but it's built out of components that are from it being a Cape Cod. I've taken a Cape Cod, and by placing this dormer on the end, made an entirely new roof shape.
Right, I think that.
And the shed, I mean, the trims obviously demarcate that it's a gable with a shed dormer on it. But I love the idea of then taking that and then blowing that up and tilting it. I think it's got some playfulness.
It does, and I think it's a really interesting take on that house, you know, and
Yeah.
modifications for that house. But what I'm saying is that your take on, doesn't reference that sort of roof shape and roof structure. There are no other buildings with that type of, those multiple roof planes, the sort of multiple pitches,
Yeah.
even two different types of roofing sort of materials.
Well, that's not true, but yeah, okay.
Okay. So it's, for me, it's hard to say that there are so many pieces of this that reference so many buildings
Mhm.
that that street to me needs to be more simplified. Because it is, the patterning is quite simplified.
Mhm.
So I just see that there's a lot happening here. Some of it directly, perhaps, as you're saying, referencing some of the other buildings. But at what point does that become a pastiche of the neighborhood? I know that's a horrible word, it's like
No,
a
it's
curse
okay.
word to use.
No.
It's like poor line,
Yeah,
really
sure.
bad language. But to me, there's just so much happening in the variation of pitch, the variation, sort of based upon our guidelines. I wish there was a purer expression
Mhm.
of some of these ideas that would tie it to a very symmetrical and harmonious sort of streetscape on your side, and even mirroring the two, well, no, those are the stone houses that are there diagonal.
Right, the house across the street has, the asymmetrical face, and then when it goes down John Street, it actually takes a jog. And that house is, the back of it almost looks like a modern house, because it's got like a 12-degree turn in the back. And the roof goes from a gable to a shed in the back, just like mine. But when the shed comes down, it's meeting a wall that's turned, so actually the height of the roof goes down as it goes. I mean, that house is more modern than mine, in a way.
The existing house is so sad.
Oh, come on, I live there.
It just compared to the rest of the neighborhood, it's just very sad. So I think
That's why I
that
bought it.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm
But
serious.
That's a sweet thing.
No, that's why I bought it, because I
I
knew,
know that you
I
can
knew,
see a lot
Right.
in it. And, like I said, I would not have chosen to take this path, but I appreciate it, and I think that it's refreshing. And I don't think that it's going to detract from the neighborhood, I think it's only gonna improve on the neighborhood.
to get back to your point about the roof, so I've said this a couple times, this roof and this roof have the same pitch. But what it does is I took the 12-12 pitch, which is really the main roof pitch of all of the houses surrounding. I mean, there's some 9-12s, 10-12s, but 12-12, a standard 45-degree. And that's the roof that I took, and then I matched this one, and so it went like this. So it was like a reference from the neighborhood and a reference from that dormer, and then I went, whoops.
Okay.
So I mean, there was a process, and the way it finishes out on the back is simply that there's another dormer, pretty much a dormer the full width, that comes back, and it created this roof, which I might try to get solar up there, but. So it's intentional, and it's pulled in from the neighborhood, especially that right angle at the top, because that's right there.
All right, well, we have covered a lot of territory with one criterion. I think maybe we should just take a look at the other 5 at the top, because we've been discussing most of them. The relationship between the results of such work and the exterior architectural features of neighboring improvements, I think we've discussed that with the rhythm, with the questions of coloration, with the questions of roof lines, factors of aesthetic, historical, architectural values and significance, style, design, arrangement, texture, material, and color. I think we've covered quite a few of those. Special character and aesthetic interest that any structure involved adds to the area. This has been approached from 2 different directions with varying degrees of agreement. And lastly, difficulty or impossibility of reproducing any structure involved because of design, texture, material, position, or detail. Given we are starting with a Cape Cod base and stone surroundings, that one speaks to me. We haven't really discussed it, but I think it's pretty obvious to all of us that replication of its surroundings would be inappropriate, starting with a cape. We are not going to make a little mini stone building out of it. It just can't. And I think we should move on to the more specific criteria down below. The building height in relation to surrounding buildings. I think the roof line is largely in keeping. The one next to it is taller, if I recall.
I think the district, that area is mostly 1.5 or 2-story buildings.
Yeah.
So either expression would be congruous with the neighborhood. Either the existing roof line or a 2-story structure that you propose would be in keeping with the neighborhood.
Yeah. Relationship to nearby roof shape. We've just had a more extensive discussion of that than we've had on most buildings, but it is more complex, and your explanation I'm grateful for, because I needed to see how you read the relationship. It's tougher for me to read from the street, but also much of this is hidden from the street level as you walk by, so it's a tough thing for me to pass judgment on.
So-
I think it is complex. It is a tough read from the street. I don't know if anyone else wants to revisit roofs or not. Relationship between width to height of the front elevation. We're increasing the height a nudge, and it is a tiny little building, especially in relation to its surrounders, its neighbors. Size proportion.
Well, could I go back to 3? To me, the modest cape proportions are understandable and make sense. Maybe not purely in that context. The proposed changes for me in the elevation ratios sort of give an appearance of stacked and slightly modified or shifted rectangles in a way, that you sort of really abstract them. And the roof line in the proposed addition gives the appearance to me that the second story is actually taller than the first, which seems out of character with the addition.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the second story then becomes a sort of much higher
Higher than what it
than the
was.
first story. They're not
You
they're
mean
not equal.
this and this?
Yes,
Right, you can see it here, a little better.
yeah.
They're, I don't know, 3 feet, 4 feet difference.
Okay, thank you. Size, proportion, and spacing of openings within the facade and elevations exposed to view. This one for me is the most troubling, the sort of offset and asymmetrical proposal for the windows is it is meant to be asymmetrical. And you've explained why. I would, it's strange for me to be promoting symmetry.
But there's just so much of it in the neighborhood, even at not exact symmetry.
Rhythm, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And taking us right to rhythm of spacing of buildings and building elements on the street. The first story is remaining relatively constant. The only real change I see are the shutters, which I think are probably on the whole a plus in referencing the rest of the streetscape. The upper story is a bigger shift. Design and placement of entrances and projections. The entrances are remaining the same, the projections are the big change. Relationship of materials, textures, and colors, and I'll be honest, it's a lot happening. And it's tough for me to get a full read on it with the samples you've given us. I don't know how anyone else feels about that. Are you getting a clearer picture than I am? This is when I usually turn to Alan.
I think here as
Right.
well, these materials have no immediate reference. I am a big fan of burnt cedar, but there is no referent in the district itself. So it's another sort of element that is new and introduced into this environment. So
It's intentional.
I know, it absolutely is.
Sure.
It's exuberantly
This is
intentional.
21st century to 20th century.
Right.
It's intentional.
We're on 8.
The relationship of architectural details. We have the maintenance of one slice of Cape Cod and the addition of admittedly 21st century in the midst. And sort of a tie-in on the bottom that is not happening.
I think going back to the fenestration too on the second story, you're adding 5 windows and they all seem to be of varying dimensions. Is that true? Or any of them?
I think I see 3.
Well, 2 on the facade side, 2 on each corner of that second story
I
addition.
think there's just one on the
And
corner
there's-
facing, would that be,
East.
no,
Yes,
west?
there's the 2 in the front, they're unique. But the width is the same. This window has the same width as all the other windows on the floor except for this one. Then the height-wise, of course, these 2 are unique. And then this one and this one are the same, and then these are the smaller windows. So they're all the same width except for the one in the front. And then other than that, if you took out these 2, there's only 2 other kinds of windows. There is a third window in the back, but you don't see it. It's in the
Right,
bathroom.
yeah. And are they the ones that we're looking at on the lower photo?
These are all the same. they're all the
Yeah, the one on the side now. Take me to the second story, take me up a story, what we have, that's an existing window I'm looking at?
No, I'm laughing because it's, I probably shouldn't show you this. Okay. Yeah, it's actually spanning between the 2 materials.
Aha, okay, but
So it's a new window.
right, that's a brand new window?
Yeah,
the-
it's the same as the window on the other side, that one.
Okay,
And then the rest are squares.
got it. Thank you. I hadn't noticed that detail. Whew. And next is continuity of walls. The interesting thing for me, the plus side again, is that bringing it out toward the street actually is closer to continuity for the rest of the block. But the building within itself has a lot of herky-jerky happening when you're looking at continuity of walls.
Did you ever consider bringing the whole, that, instead of just having the overhang
Yes,
out 5 feet, bringing the addition
first floor.
first floor?
I didn't want to touch the existing footprint.
Okay.
I thought that it was,
I appreciate that.
yeah, I thought that the idea would be to kind of leave it as it is. It's such a small site, you know,
Yeah, you're,
tiny little driveway. I just thought it would be nice to leave that as is.
And you see precedent for overhangs on the buildings further down the street?
yes, usually it's a front porch where the upper story is actually larger than the lower story. My office is a good example of that. You come up from the street onto a front porch, but what is directly above you on that front porch is a slightly larger second floor than the first floor footprint. And I think that that's also true of the white wooden buildings on your side of the street. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 doors down, you have.
They have front porches, yeah.
They have front porches, but what's above them is not just a roof line, but it's actual living space above.
I think so.
Yeah, I think.
Some of them do. I think it's on the other side of the street.
Okay, that may be as well.
It's but yeah, closer to Crown.
Yeah, if you go down that direction, that's replicated. And these last two, we haven't
these-
discussed at all, landscape elements, paving, you've got a little planter.
No, I proposed permeable pavement for the driveway as well.
Right.
Which I'm rethinking. I don't want Jed's retaining wall to fall down. I'm thinking I might want to keep it, it's blacktop right now and it's a mess.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I would replace it as is and try to push the water off one side or the other so that it doesn't go down into the ground, because that retaining wall for the Hasbrook house is right. I mean, my truck's about to fall off this side right here. There's a retaining wall right there. So I have to put a fence up too. Well, Jed has to put a fence up there too.
Here's a precedent for a pop-out on Main Street, it's
Oh,
not the same thing,
that's
but
Alex's
it's
house.
similar.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's completely different, but it is a pop-out.
Is the bluestone size gonna match other bluestone on the street, or is it, in the picture it looks smaller, but I can't tell.
Yeah, this was just for, I found it online color.
Mhm.
I like the bluestone on John Street where it has the 2/3, 1/3 pattern. It goes back and forth. I like that. The bluestone on Green Street is just a mess. It's just squares and they're all like this. So I think
And they're
I'm,
probably, I don't know offhand, I've walked it many times, but are they huge, the bluestones on Green Street?
well, the Dumont house,
Because that'd
the
be
Dumont
hard to
house has
replicate.
concrete.
Uh-huh.
And it's concrete until you get almost to the corner.
Okay.
This direction, it goes right to bluestone, but a lot of them are shattered.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think I would do more like this pattern, the 2/3, 1/3, like they just put in on John Street across from Duo.
And there's no trees in front of your house, right?
No, there's trees. The trees are all along the side here.
Along
There's
the
no trees in
side.
the front.
Okay,
Just a power pole
yeah.
and this mulberry that don't get me started on that tree. Could make jam for everyone here.
Whew. All right, so we've gone through,
We go for
I,
12.
pardon?
We do 12?
Effect on, no, we have not. And the effect on existing or historically significant spaces. This is a key for us. We are inside the stockade with a already incongruous structure becoming in some ways more, in some ways less incongruous. So this is a true balancing act that we're being asked to do. Would anyone else like to comment on this particular corner as part of the historical significance of the stockade as a whole?
I could offer, I think the Chicago Landmarks Commission could offer a commentary on Standard 9, which is what we're dealing with.
Okay, to continuity of the walls?
No, it's differentiating between new and old. And